Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely pumped you're here today because we're going to look at some cold, hard facts that prove pretty much everything you think you know about historical timelines is probably a little bit off. You know, our brains are amazing, but they have this really bad habit of taking thousands of years of complex human events and just kind of squishing them into neat but fundamentally inaccurate little boxes. You probably think you've got a pretty solid mental map of when things happened, right? Like who did what and how the world worked back then. Well, today, we're diving deep into the data to completely reshape that perspective. So buckle up, because this isn't your standard dry history lesson. It's a journey of shared discovery. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's exactly how we're going to break it down today. First, we'll start by warping your historical timeline. Then we'll move into busting famous history myths. After that, we're looking at surprising firsts and innovations. And finally, we'll wrap the whole shebang up with history's most bizarre conflicts. It's going to be a highly organized journey through human history's little quirks. All right, Section 1, warping your historical timeline. Let's start shifting your perspective a bit. So our brains really tend to compress history, right? We just group everything labeled ancient into one massive bucket. Like, if you ask most people, they'll instinctively group Cleopatra right alongside the building of the Great Pyramid of Giza. I mean, they're both ancient Egypt, obviously, but the dates tell a jarringly different story. The Great Pyramid was completed around 2560 BC. Cleopatra, she lived around 30 BC. That is a massive gap of over 2.5 millennia. And this brilliantly illustrates the illusion, because the year 30 BC is actually significantly closer to 1969 AD, the year humans landed on the moon, than it is to the construction of the pyramids. I mean, let that sink in for a second. Cleopatra living her life, ruling her kingdom, is chronologically closer to Neil Armstrong taking a giant leap for mankind than she is to the architects of her own empire's most famous monuments. It just completely shatters how we categorize ancient times, doesn't it? Okay, here's another one that's just going to completely warp your perspective. Oxford University was founded around 1096 AD. Now, we generally think of the Aztecs as this incredibly ancient, lost civilization, right? We picture ruined temples and deep jungle vines. And conversely, we think of Oxford as this pillar of the modern, civilized academic world. Yet, people had been studying at Oxford for over 200 years before the Aztec Empire even began, in the early 14th century. It's crazy. And to anchor our modern world even further back, the very first computer algorithms were created in the 1800s. The roots of our education and our technology actually stretch much, much further back than we casually assume, while some of those supposedly ancient empires, well, they're relatively recent. Moving right along to Section 2, busting famous history myths, because it is wild how easily myths become accepted as facts over the centuries. So, let me ask you a question. Can you see the Great Wall of China from space? You've probably heard this at a trivia night or, I don't know, read it in some childhood fact book. It's universally repeated as this ultimate testament to human engineering. We all just agree it's true, right? Well, is it? Actually, no, it absolutely is not true. Without the aid of a really powerful telescopic lens, you cannot see the Great Wall of China from space. And the reason why is actually pretty simple. It blends right in. You see, the wall was built using local materials, stone, clay, dirt, which means it perfectly matches the color and texture of the natural landscape surrounding it. Plus, while it's incredibly long, sure, it's not particularly wide. So from low Earth orbit, the human eye literally cannot distinguish it from the mountains and earth it sits on. It is a beautiful myth, but yeah, it's a myth nonetheless. The crucial point here is that we have to be super careful about what we accept as common knowledge. Like, the popular myth tells us Napoleon Bonaparte was this tiny, highly aggressive tyrant throwing constant tantrums. But the reality? The guy was 5'6" tall. Now you might be thinking, well, 5'6" isn't exactly towering, but context is everything here. Back in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, 5'6" was perfectly average height for a French male. He wasn't short at all. That entire misconception was actually just a brilliant, enduring piece of British propaganda. They drew him as this miniature little guy in political cartoons, just to diminish his threat. And the joke was so effective that it survived for centuries. It even spawned the psychological term Napoleon complex. It's honestly amazing how a good cartoon can literally rewrite history. All right, Section 3, surprising firsts and innovations. I absolutely love this part because we get to see how unexpected innovations shape the very fabric of our modern lives. You might honestly be surprised where some of our modern staples actually come from. Think about the oldest recipe in human history. What do you think it was for? Like bread? Some kind of ancient hearty stew? Nope. The oldest known written recipe, dating all the way back to around 1800 BC on these cuneiform clay tablets, is for beer. And this isn't just some fun piece of trivia. It actually tells us something profound about human culture. Brewing wasn't just a casual afterthought. It was of massive ancient significance. It was so deeply important to early civilizations that they went through the painstaking effort of literally carving the instructions into clay just to preserve them. So hey, next time you grab a drink with friends, just remember you're participating in a highly documented tradition that spans almost 4 millennia. Now, what's really interesting here is how this totally challenges our modern tech stereotypes. When we think of the very first computer programmer, we usually imagine someone in a sterile lab in the 1950s, or maybe in a Silicon Valley garage in the 1970s. But the title of the world's first computer programmer actually belongs to an English mathematician named Ada Lovelace, and remarkably, she did this in the 1800s. She worked with Charles Babbage on his early mechanical computer, which was known as the analytical engine. Lovelace recognized that this machine had applications way beyond just pure math and calculation, and she published the first algorithm intended to be carried out by it. So a woman in the 19th century literally laid the conceptual groundwork for the digital age we're all living in today. How cool is that? 15. That is the exact number of centimeters the Eiffel Tower can grow taller during hot summer days. I mean, this is such a brilliant example of science and architecture intersecting. The tower is constructed entirely of puddled iron, so when that massive metal structure is subjected to the intense heat of the summer sun, it undergoes thermal expansion. The metal particles gain kinetic energy, they move around more, and they literally take up more space. This causes the entire tower to stretch skyward. It's essentially a breathing, expanding monument to engineering. And finally, Section 4, history's most bizarre conflicts. Because let's face it, history is wonderfully weird. If you study history long enough, you start to realize that while human beings are capable of great nobility and profound genius, we are also capable of intense, highly documented absurdity. 38 minutes. That is the exact duration of the Anglo-Zanzibar War in 1896. Fought between the mighty British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar, it officially holds the record as the shortest war in recorded history. I mean, think about that for a second. You could order a pizza right when the war started, and the entire conflict, the declarations, the naval bombardment, the surrender, the whole shebang would be completely over before the delivery driver even rang your doorbell. It perfectly and kind of tragically encapsulates the overwhelming disparity in military power during the height of European imperialism. And speaking of ridiculous diplomatic situations, take the War of the Stray Dog. In 1928, the United States and Canada, two massive, generally peaceful neighbors, actually experienced serious diplomatic tensions over a stray dog named Shaggy. I mean, just imagine the high-level meetings. Picture these very serious diplomats in suits exchanging fiercely worded memos over the legal jurisdiction and rightful ownership of a wandering pup. Now, thankfully it didn't devolve into actual combat, but the mere fact that a stray dog caused an international border dispute is easily one of the most delightful and bizarre footnotes in North American history. We have to end on this because it is perhaps the strangest event of all, the dancing plague of 1518. Textbooks defined it as a sudden and uncontrollable urge among residents of Strasbourg to dance for days without rest. And honestly, it sounds almost comical until you realize the terrifying reality of what actually happened. In July 1518, hundreds of people took to the streets and simply could not stop dancing. They danced until their feet literally bled. They danced right through total exhaustion, and many reportedly danced until they collapsed from strokes or heart attacks. And the most chilling part of the whole story? The cause remains completely unknown. Was it a mass psychogenic illness? Ergot poisoning from moldy rye? To this day, history has absolutely no definitive answer for this bizarre, fatal compulsion. Which brings us to the end of our journey today. So, what does this all mean? Well, I have to ask, which historical illusion shocked you the most? Was it the mind-bending timeline warping of Cleopatra? The shattering of that Great Wall space myth? Or maybe the fact that 19th century computer programming was a real thing? I really hope this explainer has shown you that history is definitely not just some static, boring list of dates in a dusty old book. It's dynamic, it's deeply weird, and it is entirely dependent on our willingness to look past the illusions and focus on the actual incredible facts. Keep questioning what you think you know, and I will see you in the next explainer.